Hello, and welcome to another episode of Teaching with Inquiry Live. Tonight, I'm going to share with you how I get ready to go back to school. So I will be able to be back in my classroom as of next Monday. And I've already started collecting a few things that I have ready to go to be put back in my classroom, as well as some other planning things that I'm going to get done this week so that when I go into my classroom next week, I'm ready to go. So I want to share that with you tonight. So the first thing I want to show you is kind of my process of how I organize myself to get ready to go back into the classroom before I actually show up. And then I want to show you some of the things that I have that I want to use in my classroom this year and how I'm going to change things up and do things a little bit differently. So the first thing I want to show you is some of the documents that I prepare in order to get myself ready to go back to school. So the very first thing I do is I actually plan out my classroom layout before I go into class. I try to play around with different ways that my furniture can be assembled in the classroom based on my anticipated class list and what I want the classroom to look like. I really look through things like flow and how the space is used, and I try to think through all the different scenarios, like where my students will line up, where my carpet will be, where I need to have my computer, how many students I have. So that means how many tables will I be required for the year. And again, where I'm going to be planning out some of my flexible seating options as well. Now, what I ended up doing is in the springtime, I actually go and measure my classroom. So my classroom is 10 meters by 7 meters. So this is actually my classroom plan for the last 7 years. So I have a whole lot of different classroom plans, as you see on the side. I just add a new one every single year. However, this year I'm actually going to be in a new classroom. So because I'm in a new classroom, now the classroom itself is exactly the same size. It's 10 meters by 7 meters. So I have the same space to work with, except I do have 2 closets that have hooks in them that students don't use. And I have a lot of open shelves, whereas before I had closed shelving. So I really do need to think through things like traffic pattern, and I don't have a mounted smart board or projector this year, which means that I will have to figure out where I'm going to put a table to house my projector as well as document camera, and really try to think about how that workflow is going to look in my new classroom. So I love doing stuff like that. So I'm not really upset about there being a new classroom, but it does mean that I'm going to have a lot of planning that I'm going to have to put in place. So my furniture is going to be the same. And so what I do is I take my furniture measurements and then I always add this blue space around it. Now, this is just done in PowerPoint. The blue space around it allows for movement around tables as well as for the space that chairs take up. So the blue section is actually the amount of space that is needed when you have bodies at the tables, because that's an important factor to consider, as well as my shelves and where my desks are. And I try to imagine how students are going to operate through the classroom. I have found that this is so much easier for me to think through all of these things instead of showing up next Monday and then just starting to move furniture around, looking at it, then moving it again, then looking at it, and then moving it again. If I think about it in a mock-up sort of way with this kind of layout on PowerPoint, then I am able to go into my classroom on Monday and not spend a tremendous amount of time reorganizing the furniture, because I've probably tried it a bunch of different ways. So you can see I have a bunch of different iterations of the same space. Now this is the layout that's for my old classroom as well. So just different ability to play around with different layouts. And I thought I would try something crazy, but it does let me see how things are going to function in my room. I never ended up going with this one, but it was something I thought, oh, I could play around with. And instead of me spending all that time moving the furniture, I could actually play around with it on my computer instead. So that is one of the first things I do. Once I have an idea of where my furniture is going to be laid out and I've thought through those traffic plans, another thing that I end up doing is going through all of my routines and structures that are going to need to be in place. When I was a new teacher, this is something that I didn't often do. And then I ended up feeling sometimes chaotic or disorganized because I hadn't thought through some of the different routines that we would have to go through. Even though I would change them up throughout the year, going in with at least a plan as to how you want things to go means that it's probably going to be a little bit more organized for both you and your students. So this PDF is actually a document that you can get in my free resource library. So if you go to www.madlylearning.com/free library, I think that's the site. I'll check that out to make sure. But it's just gone through and I just ask myself these questions every year. And I redo this every year because I've got a new group of students that are coming in and there's things that didn't work last year that I might want to change, or I have a new room, so the routine is going to be different, or I have a new schedule. So last year I always had to start with language, whereas in previous years I started with math. So that often changed what my morning routine looked like and how they entered the classroom. So it just goes through things like your morning routines and all of the things that happen in the morning, and your routines throughout the day. How will it look like when they come in from recess? Will they work at their desks? What will independent work look like? So it's questions that I ask myself that I want answered so that I have that in my brain ahead of time. And I will often put this in my plan book that first week of school, just to review all of the things I actually need to go over with students in that first week. So daily routines, especially if you've got technology, what that looks like, what your rules, rewards, how and why, all of those questions are good to be asked. And then there's always going to be a few more as well. So again, you can get that in my free resource library, but it's definitely something I do, that I walk myself through this process. So this is my task this week, is to go through all of these things, get them all laid out and ready to go so I can jump right in and get started on Monday when I show back up in my classroom. Now, another thing that I look at is my tech tools. I do have iPads in my classroom, so I can normally get my students up to a 2-to-1 ratio for devices, whether it's a bringing your own device. Students that have SIA claim iPads for learning disabilities, or whether they're bringing in their own device, and I have school supplied iPads through my school board as well as through my school. So I like to have a set of apps that are available and downloaded onto our iPads. And I want to make sure that these are going to be tools that I can use in my classroom. So we may have to look through which ones we have to go over as students. I love Google Classroom. I'm not sure how much longer I myself am going to be able to use it. I think we are going to be pushed towards using D2L and Brightspace. So my learning this year is probably going to be figuring out how to use those. Keynote and PowerPoint are key for me. I make all of the things that I use in my classroom on either Keynote or PowerPoint. Explain Everything is one of the essential apps that gets students to digitally show you their thinking. They can add videos, animations, text, pictures, all of those things. So if you need a student to capture what they're doing and they're learning, especially in math when they're working with math manipulatives, this tech tool, Explain Everything, is just, it does everything, and it's amazing for students, and it's easy to use. And they love there's a little like ninja lightsaber. That's what it is. It's not ninja at all. It's Star Wars. It's a lightsaber. I never show them how to figure that out, but they always find out. LiveBinder is another great tool. If you have any of my science or social studies resources from TPT, you have probably seen my LiveBinders. A LiveBinder is simply just a digital binder that is stored online, and you can drop links for your students, and they're all organized into tabs and subtabs. I use LiveBinder all of the time to help organize research links for my students or things that I want them to go to, because if for some reason a link dies and it redirects and all of a sudden the QR code that I had put on a worksheet doesn't work anymore, a live binder, I can then just change the live binder link inside the live binder. So what I will do in my classroom is create a QR code that links to the live binder, and I'll post that. Because I control both the QR code and the live binder, that path from in my classroom to getting those research doesn't die, because I control both of those things. And then I can update what my students see once they get to the live binder. So I can update links and all of those things. So if you have technology in your classroom, but you don't simply just want students to have free reign on Google, and you want to have a little bit more control as to the sources that they're using for their research, especially for inquiry projects, or I know a lot of times there's new information coming out all the time and you want to keep current, you can add that stuff in kind of as you go. So live binders is a great tool for that. These are also great tools. Again, a QR code reader. I find a QR code reader is helpful for any time I need students to link to something specific on the internet. I will make a QR code for them to scan. The last thing I want to do is to give them the URL. So the www dot blah, 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 blah. It takes forever, especially for my students with special education needs. Copying often the gobbledygook that's in there is really difficult for them, but scanning a QR code is really fast. So I will use QR code reader, and if I do need to include a URL address, I will use the link shortener called bit.ly, and bit.ly allows me to take a really long website address and shorten it to only a couple of characters, and I can actually use real words. So I could make my classroom website bit.ly/Firth Classroom. And that could be the link that they could easily remember to get to my classroom website if they can't always take that QR code home. So far we've got routine planning, classroom layout planning, the tech tools that I'm going to be using in my classroom. I plan those out and get those set up for my students. And I also write the only real paper copy newspaper. The only thing I write down on my newsletter that I'm going to print out. This is it. It's the only time it goes home. Everything else has gone through with my website, and I set that up too. And we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So I won't get into my website, but I do send home a newsletter that welcomes parents. It gives them information on our classroom as well as our learning plans. This version here is the version when I went back after a half-year maternity leave, so it only says term 2 there. As well as I have an about me section so parents can get to know about me, my policy on homework, which is that I don't like homework, essentially. I also give parents some insight that we will be using inquiry-based learning in the classroom and what that means and what that looks like, as well as how parents can focus on supporting inquiry and a growth mindset at home. And I find that this is really helpful because it gets parents kind of a lead in to what they can talk about at home and how they can help. And finally, we talk about technology and as well as the fact that students can bring in their own devices. However, here are my essential apps that students do need to have access to when they're bringing in their own devices. So I do require the Explain Everything paid. So I do want parents, if you're going to bring in your own device, to spend the money to pay that app, as well as using QR code, Google Drive, Google Calendar, and YouTube, subscribing to our classroom YouTube channel. I have my preferred contact information. I do not contact parents through the agenda. I make that pretty clear, and I share with them all of those other things as well. So those are some of the forms and paperwork that I can get ready now so that I can be ready to go back to school. And those are just a few of the things that I prepare. I also will write out my first week schedule and what that looks like. My first week day plans and what that looks like as well. I follow a lot of the same activities. For language arts, I follow my first 15-day plan. For ignited literacy and math, it's just a lot of diagnostics and getting started. I do start science and social studies, some STEM activities to get started. I don't use my entire first week with get to know you games. I embed those get to know you and community building things within the context of the curriculum that I am teaching. So I try to get started right away, and I don't look at the first week as simply just being the fun time and then having school start week 2. School starts day 1, and I will still use a lot of those games and community building activities and building in a sense of culture and establishing the rules and routines in the classroom. And things are really slow that first week, but I'm definitely jumping right into curriculum and embedding those first week activities in the context of the curriculum that I'm supposed to be covering. All right. So the next thing I want to share with you are some of the things that I use to get into my classroom. Every year I add a few pieces of furniture and remove some from my classroom. So this year you'll see this is my old classroom here, but my door actually is right here, whereas previously it was over. So it was right here where that purple desk is. So I will have to rearrange some of that furniture. But one of the things that I have been looking for is the IKEA Trofast bins. Those are the bins that have the little ledges where you can slide the bucket in and pull the bucket out. And it has, the buckets are kind of a little bit bigger and sturdier plastic. This year I just used a regular shelf and some plastic baskets from the dollar store as hand-in bins. So I had a different bin for each subject, and students just put their paperwork in the bin when they handed it in. And then I also had frequently used anchor charts or graphic organizers, feedback forms. Those also had their own bin where students could just take the paper out of that bin. But I found that those bins often broke because you were constantly pulling on them and they were heavy. So I needed something that was a little bit more sturdy. So I have been looking on Facebook Marketplace and I found a Trofast cabinet for about $40 from a lady close to where I live. And so I found it used, cleaned it up. I have to get buckets still, but those Trofast buckets are going to be my hand-in buckets, and they're going to sit at the front of the room because that's kind of the center space where we gather and where students' traffic goes to that bin. So I will most likely have that bin up at the front of the room, and it will have, again, all of my hand-in bins for language, math, and social studies, as well as having my frequently used papers and feedback forms for math and language that will be in there that students can just grab. And I'm hoping that that's going to be a far sturdier solution than the simple, flimsier plastic hand-in bins that I got at Dollarama. So that is kind of my big purchase this year in terms of furniture. And I do try to make sure that all my furniture matches. So last year I ended up painting my furniture. I often will spend a portion of my back to school time painting. In the spring, I actually painted all of my bookshelves and cupboards that are in my room white and repainted all of my blackboards black, so that I can go ahead and replicate the board that you see behind me. This is what my classroom board will look like in my classroom. So I do have a triple stack border, and I know it's busy and I love it, and that's okay with me. So I have a triple stack border with a black background, and then I also have pink and yellow paper and light blue paper. Ooh, there we go, light blue paper. As an accent as well. So that's a sample of my Ignited Literacy board that will be in my classroom, but on bigger scale. And I will have to hang up all of my bulletin borders for next week and plan out that all of my bulletin boards are always the same color. So I use the same color and the same bulletin borders on all of the boards throughout my entire classroom, just to keep consistency. I find visually it's easier when it's consistent. So that's what I'll do there. Now, a few other systems that I'm going to have in place. So I do decorate my boards. So I'm going to show you the top of that board there. So those are just decorations from the dollar store, and they're pre-made. So you just buy this little flower poof and then spread it out, and you get those big poofs up there. And then you have these yellow fans. Now this is in the wedding/party section at Dollarama. but they are great to just throw up and decorate the corners of your board, and they're not super pricey. And I also get this little garland. I have them not in blue, but in pink and in yellow. So I picked those up from Dollarama because I like to have those little touches of fun wherever I can. What's going to be new this year is I want to use these push lights and and I'm going to put labels on the front, but I'm going to use those push lights for voice level. So I do have a lot of the same students that I had last year. And one of the things that I found I should have had in my classroom was a voice level monitor. So that's simply just a chart that gives students an idea of what activity we're doing and what level their voice should be. So should it be silent? Should it be whisper level? Should it be normal talking voice? Or should it be like an outside recess voice? What is going to be appropriate for the classroom? So I have multiple of these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these on the wall, and the label will sit on them. And when the light is lighted up, that's the voice level that the students should be at. Not my idea. Totally. So many people have these on Instagram and Pinterest. Thought it was a great idea. So I'm going to try it myself in my classroom this year. Some other things that I have picked up is I always like to pick up colored tape, and I use this to separate sections on my blackboards and whiteboards. So I have masking tape as well as washi tape that I picked up from Staples. So I find nice colorful, matches the borders back there. So I can use that to separate things in my classroom, such as my schedule board, I can do a calendar on there, just sectioning off different sections of my board so that it stays sectioned off. I enjoy that. I also grabbed 2 magnetic buckets. Now these are locker storage that I found at Staples today, and it will be great for those anchor charts that are just subject or specific to that week. So if there's handouts that I have for students, I can put them in these wire baskets, and they're magnets because they're for lockers, but I'm using them on my magnetic blackboards. But I thought these would be great to put on there instead of sitting them on the ledge of my blackboard, which is often what I do. Is I hand them out, and I always have those extra papers because inevitably people forget, or they need multiple ones for this week's lesson, so I don't want to have to hold them around. So I often will put them just on the ledge of the blackboard, and they kind of do that curve thing as they line up, go up the blackboard, and then inevitably another student will walk past it and they all come tumbling down. So I thought, well, this would be a great solution to that problem. I can just put them right in here, and maybe I can even put them inside like file folders or envelopes or something. I could also use this for like permission forms, or who knows, I'm sure I can use this for a lot. I only picked up 2. I wish they had more in the colors that I was looking for, but they had pink and teal, purple and blue and black. So I got those at Staples today, and they're in the locker. It was just in the center of an aisle, and it's all the stuff that kids can use to put in their lockers, like locker shelves and all of those things. Those were there. So I thought that was a good. And the last thing that I've grabbed this year, this is something else that I've also seen lots of teachers use. Oh, you can see my light there. This is a big scrapbook case. And the reason I got these is because, number one, they're enormous, but I can put binders in them, but I can also put all the loose ends and odds and sods for the different units I teach. So I got one for each of the science and social studies units that are covered in my curriculum. And I'm going to put everything for those subjects in that bin. So I will put the binder with the lesson plans, and then I'll put an envelope with all of the Wonderwall cards, as well as task cards, experiment things. If they're just like the cards that go in there, I do have other experiment buckets with manipulatives and stuff. But I thought those would be great. They're clear. I can throw a label on them. Just print out a label, put it on the cover, and they're big enough that I can fit multiple things in them. So I could fit a binder in them if I needed to, but then also all the loose stuff that might not always fit in a binder. Because right now they're just sitting in my closed cupboards in buckets, but I don't have closed cupboards this year. Everything's open. So I don't want all of my experiment stuff and resource stuff to be open for my students all the time. So I thought these would be a great solution to use for unit storage. So I got these at Michael's and they were on sale, plus the teacher's discount pretty much got me no tax. I think I paid like $6 or $7 for each of them, which if I can store them, once I get them filled, I will take a photo of them and share them with you. So that is kind of what I'm bringing to school at this point. I have a few other things that I brought home to clean that I will be taking back with me, but I often will like to go and find different things and different finds for myself to use. Now, one of the other things that I think is important, none of the things I've talked about are curriculum, getting ready and planning out your curriculum. Now that's because all of my curriculum is already planned because it's in my TPT store. So I have all of my language, my math, my science, and my social studies already planned and ready to go. I have the framework. Now when I'm in the thick of it with my students, I'm being responsive to what they need and I'm tailoring the learning to kind of their interests and what they're doing. But I definitely have my stuff already there. So that takes a huge amount of stress off of me that I have my science and my social studies stuff planned. I know what's happening with language. It's all sitting there on the shelf behind me, ready to go in binders, that I can go ahead with my math because it's there. I know what that structure is going to look like. And those are in part and parcel because they're already planned and ready to go. I've used them. I know they work, as well as I've had the same grade-ish for a couple of years. So this year will be my first year at this school with a straight. We'll see how long that lasts, but every other year I've had a split. So this year I will have a straight. So that will be a little bit different. So if you are stressing about planning out all of that curriculum piece and still thinking, but I've got to get all that other stuff done of what setting up my classroom stuff, then I have exciting news for you because TPT has decided that they're giving a bonus sale. So if you missed the 2-day sale on August 6th and 7th, don't worry about it. There's another sale starting tomorrow. It is the last sale that's going to happen on TPT before like December, like Thanksgiving, Cyber Monday. That's the next sale. So this is the last time all products will be at the lowest prices they ever are, which is about 25% off. So I have a 20% off sale in my store, and then TPT matches with 5% additional when you use the code. So if there is still anything left over, if you were away and had some shoddy internet signal, I know a few of you did, tomorrow is the TPT sale. Actually, it starts at midnight tonight. So if you're like really eager, stay up till midnight and click buy and buy all the things. And you can get yourself ready to go so that you have all of the stuff you want to buy and things you want to try. You can do all of your planning in terms of structure and classroom layout, routines, as well as the tech you need. All of that can be done too. So again, tomorrow, or starting at midnight, is the final TPT sale of the season. So you can head on over as soon as we stop this live. You can head on over to TPT, start adding crazy stuff to your wish list. I've got a few things I recommend for you if you're looking for a teacher planner. There is a great one by Joey Udovich, her teacher planner. If you just type in teacher planner on TPT, it's fantastic. If you either want to try planning on Google Slides or printing it out, I bought it the last sale. It's amazing. Another resource that I think is just wonderful is the digital word wall from Happily Ever After. And this is great. I don't have the space in my room because it's all taken up for other things to put a full word wall up. So I'm going to have a digital word wall this year. And she has that already done. So those two stores are Joey Udovich for the planner and Happily Ever After for the digital word wall, which is really cool. So I highly recommend, if you don't have those things in your cart, put those things in your cart too, as well as all of the other things you need to teach junior grades in Ontario from Madly Learning. So thanks so much for joining me. And next week, I will not be going live at 9 o'clock at night. I'm actually going to do a special live broadcast from inside my classroom as I'm in the thick of setting it up. So I'm going to walk you through some of the things that I'm doing to set up my classroom and sharing that with you. So stay tuned when I announce which time. I'm not sure about the hours we're allowed to be in our classrooms next week, but stay tuned and I will share with you what time, special time, I will be going live next week. And additionally, if you have missed the live masterclass that I did on August 5th, 6th, and 7th on how to plan and schedule your highly effective language arts program, I am doing a bonus masterclass training tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you missed it the first time, tomorrow is when you can log in and sign up for the masterclass training on how to plan and schedule your highly effective language arts program. And the website for that, I will drop in the comments just after I click because it's a bit of a long one. So right after I end the video, I will put the link in there so that you can sign up for that free masterclass training tomorrow at 1 p.m. I can't wait to see you there. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody, and I will see you next week live from my classroom as I show you all of the things I'm doing to set it up. Bye for now.